I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way.
Houston, we have a problem.
But why name bodies?
Are you not entertained?
Why so serious?
He's alive! He's alive!
The snozberry tastes like snozberry.
Welcome to Film Logic, a movie podcast looking at the past, present, and future of movies and every fandom in between. We are part of the Retro Logic Network, which includes On Topic, Retro Logic, and Retro Groove. But we are not just a network of podcasts and nerds, but we're also a swell group of geeks on Discord. So check our links to find out who we are on Discord. We are great bunch of guys and we have lots of fun. I am with Adam.
Hello.
The man who invented Counter Earth.
What? What? Why are you making me the bad guy? What the heck?
And I am with special guest Chris.
Hello.
Hi, Chris.
He will never call you a bad dog.
No, you have to do something pretty bad to do that.
Yes.
Exactly. And I mean, this is probably a pretty good time to put it out there that we are going to be talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So if you haven't seen it yet, warning, spoilers, pause it, go watch it, and come back. But this is not going to be a spoiler-free pod.
Yeah. I think we should just wait right now.
Yeah, right.
All right. Come on, folks. Watch it.
Yeah, go watch it now.
Hit pause. Okay, you've seen it now. Let's go.
Let's get to it.
All right. Chris, I have one question, and it has to do with your name. But do you have a favorite game from 1994?
I mean, if you ask members of the Retro Logic Discord and the Nintendo Dads Discord, they might call it an unhealthy obsession. Yes, I am a fan of the video game NHL 94. I still think it's the best video game of all time. Hot take, I know. But that's where the name comes from. And my constant campaign, my everlasting campaign to get the new game NHL 94 Rewind on Nintendo Switch.
So I'm so curious as to what makes it better than every other NHL game ever made.
Good question.
Well, it really hits the sweet spot of nostalgia and simplicity. Let's say that. I think as a 40-something, I'm probably speaking to more of the older gamers.
Mm-hmm.
It's really easy to pick up and play. And it really, obviously I grew up with it, so there's that factor as well. I'm looking at it with rose-colored glasses in a way, but objectively, you can look up ratings of the NHL series. It is in the top 3. I don't think it's rated number 1. That's, I think, goes to NHL 12 or something like that. So, as a game, because of where the technology was, it kind of, it for some people, and there's a community online who will agree with me, it hits the pinnacle of hockey games.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there isn't much more to improve on after that.
Yes. Well, that's amazing that it's aged so well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking online and it's performing pretty decently. I'm looking, it's 59th in IGN's top 100 SNES games of all time. Let's see, it's named 100 best all time in 1997 by Electronic Gaming Monthly. Bleacher Report listed as the second best hockey game ever made behind NHL 10. So
That's fun. Yeah.
I mean, for me personally, nothing will beat NHL Hits, but I can get behind it.
I mean, if you want a movie tie-in, it's referenced very heavily in the movie Swingers. And of course,
Okay.
Swingers being a really great movie. I mean, what else do you do? In
What else do you
Swingers, Vince Vaughn made Wayne Gretzky's head bleed. Come on. Right there.
Nice. Oh,
Yeah,
I like
I
that we
mean,
brought it back to movies.
yeah, right. And who else directed that other than Jon Favreau, who is
Exactly.
very involved in the MCU.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's
the
full
MC
circle.
I knew there was a reason I was on the show tonight.
Full circle.
Amazing, amazing. Speaking of something that's not so amazing, Aston
Mm,
isn't here.
poor guy.
I know his kids are sick,
He's
and
sick.
yeah, he's sick. So
He's
to
being
quote,
the dutiful father for looking after his children, and then unfortunately getting sick as a result.
yes,
Yeah.
it's a rite of passage.
Rite of
Right.
passage.
And to quote the villain from this movie, there is no Aston. That's why I stepped in. Yes.
Incredible.
All right. So before we get into the review
Hmm.
of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, um, Adam and I like to do this thing where we like to imagine our own movies, recast, rethink, and since it's Marvel month, we're going to think of a movie in the Marvel universe. We're going to come up with our own movies with the Marvel universe and kind of come up with our own direction of our own MCU. So I know I took it times 600. So I don't know if I'm going to share everything, but I at least want to tell you that I geeked out on this horribly. Would anyone like to go first so as to not embarrass themselves when I go?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a high bar to hit, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'd love to go. I'd love to go first if that's fine.
That's great. Yeah.
Um, I mine is a little bit more of a reimagining of Black Panther, uh, and less so than like a fan casting like yours is, Mike. Mike, Mike's is truly I can't put it into words. Um,
It's
but I kind of
full
well, go
treatment.
ahead. Yeah, right. It's certainly something, and when we posed the question about rethinking a Marvel movie, three of them came right to mind. Um, I wasn't super thrilled with Eternals. I wasn't personally super thrilled with Endgame. I think Endgame hinges a lot on a rat and time travel, and I'm not the biggest fan of time travel as a storytelling device. I think once you kind of introduce, you know, time travel into a story, it's a moot point. Now anything and everything is not, isn't permanent. But I was like, no, I'll go with a reimagining of Black Panther. And my three biggest problems with Black Panther is one, um, I think that the MCU as a universe is the same regardless if the original movie happens or not. Like nothing fundamentally changes the MCU because of Black Panther. Like the end of Civil War could go right into Avengers or sorry, Civil War could go right into Infinity War without, Black Panther as a movie existing, and nothing would really fundamentally change. So that's my first problem. The second one is I think that Killmonger has a point, and T'Challa doesn't really present anything from a moral standpoint that is strong enough to go head to head with Eric Killmonger's position. And basically to me it kind of boils down to like they just it's a fight, and because one side wins over the other, they're
Mhm.
right. And it I don't know, it doesn't really sway me one way or another. And three, I think that they really waste their villains in this one between Claw and Killmonger. And um I know that there's no way for them to be able to predict what happened with Chadwick, and sadly the fact that he lost his life in subsequent years. But I'm sure that they wish that they kept Killmonger around because they certainly brought him back in the new Black Panther. Not physically, but um, yeah, I'm sure that they wish that he was still there. So in my reimagining of the story, Killmonger is still physically there, and I think has a little bit more of an impact on the story. So uh, quickly, just some story beats that I would change is that I would, following T'Chaka's death in Civil War, I would the other tribes in Wakanda, some of the tribes are more discontent with the isolationist opinions of uh, T'Challa and the powers that be, and some of them are more motivated to want to break out of that. And then another story beat moving on, and a lot of the movie I would keep mostly the same. I'm just going to share some story beats that I would add or take away. Um, that Killmonger doesn't kill Claw uh, before he comes back to Wakanda, but instead he kind of entices Claw to do a heist to get vibranium after he failed to do so earlier in 1992. So then he uses Claw to kind of get into Wakanda, but then eventually Killmonger double crosses him, puts him in jail, and then challenges T'Challa to combat. Um, and then while they're fighting, Killmonger convinces the other tribal leaders that were kind of discontent that he has a point, and ultimately Killmonger loses combat to T'Challa. Um, but instead of T'Challa having like a total victory, half the people and half the tribes start following Killmonger instead of T'Challa, and it starts like a civil war. And then Claw, while he's in jail, actually double crossed Killmonger, and he escapes from the prison, and he steals some nanotech and escapes Wakanda. And then on the outside, Claw uses this nanotech with some Stark slash Chitauri tech to create an army, a robot army to help invade Wakanda and get more vibranium out to sell. But while that's all happening in Wakanda, the two factions are in battle with Killmonger slowly winning, and it tips more into his favor when eventually he gets his hands on the herbs, forcing T'Challa to turn to M'Baku for help to turn the tide. And just before the final battle, Claw invades, and he starts, decimating both sides. And then both sides are forced to retreat, and then they come to agreement to reunite all the tribes. And to work together against Claw. And then as the two Panthers team up together, they push back and win, but they have a new peace treaty where they decide to now rule together equally with other tribes. And instead of being isolationist, they begin to kind of reach out and help the world. And the movie ends. It ends because now that they're weakened, they have to, turn outwardly to get some help, whether that's from Shield or if that's from other people, and then they finally decide that they need to help out the Avengers that have just escaped the raft at the end of Civil War. So they come to Wakanda to help them rebuild, and they've now become a part of Wakanda, and it ends with them there, and then that leads right into Infinity War. So that would be my rewrite of Black Panther. And I know that wasn't as exciting as what I'm sure is to come with your fan casting and stuff, but that's how I would rewrite Black Panther. And I just feel like it I don't know, it just feels yeah, I feel like it just addressed some of those issues that I had at the beginning where um it like Black Panther feels like a standalone movie where it doesn't I don't know, it just feels like kind of out of place in the timeline, and it kind of I feel like the rewrite puts it back into the timeline and it makes sense. And it keeps Killmonger alive, and I think that they have some villains in Claw and Killmonger that still exist and can be used again into the future. And I think that Killmonger would start almost like a redemption arc into into the new Black Panther movie where T'Challa would die, and then Killmonger has to kind of step up and kind of bridge that
Mhm.
gap. But yeah, that's me.
I'm,
What do you guys feel?
I mean, to play devil's advocate,
Yeah, let's do it.
it seems like you've written the movie, the ending to the Marvel movie that nobody likes because no one likes the faceless army, and that was the big criticism for a lot of the Phase 1 and 2 movies was that, oh, well, where's that faceless army we have to defeat at the end? And that's what Claw's doing here. He's creating a faceless army for them to to everybody to slaughter. Um,
For sure,
I
for
don't
sure.
I don't
Mhm.
know. I don't know if I think Black Panther is a. I mean, I definitely agree that Killmonger has a point, and I think that's what makes him one of the most compelling villains of the MCU.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and unfortunately, because obviously no one knew Chadwick Boseman had cancer, that we have to replace him as the Black Panther. But I mean, in my mind, Black Panther is my top 4 in the
Mm.
MCU because of the way it was written, and again, Killmonger being the most compelling villain with a reasonable motivation. And I mean, their plots are all kind of goofy in the end because they're comic book movies.
Yeah,
And
of
trying to get
course.
from part A to part B is never really a straight line that you think, well, there was probably an easier way to do that.
Right,
But
right.
um, the end, having Eric Killmonger die, was one of the most compelling and most meaningful endings because he took a personal stand and said, "No, I don't want to be a slave anymore. I would rather die." And yeah, I know you can save me, but I don't want you to.
So,
Right, right. Mm. Go
do
ahead, Mike.
you agree that him working under T'Challa would have been a slavery? I mean, I guess he thought it was slavery, but um,
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't know. The way that I view the character, I I don't know. I feel like I think that he really believed that. I think the character, the way that it was written, I think he really believes that.
mhm.
Um but I feel like that's just I don't know. I feel like that's such a waste of a character, you know what I mean? Just like sacrificing himself on a platitude, right? Like
Mhm.
um
Well, and
mhm,
Killmonger falls into that similar trope that
mm,
all the Marvel heroes get in their origin story. They get a villain who's like their mirror. Like Iron Man gets Ironmonger, Thor gets Loki, Captain America gets Red Skull. They get the same. They get this mirror of themselves, and then yeah, we do tend to waste them. And I think Shannon and I have had this discussion on many of the dinner table over at the Nintendo Dads. Is that you can't once you use the character up, you can't really bring them back, and it's going to lead into my reimagining because I have a different
mm,
film that I was definitely disappointed with.
mm, for sure, for sure. And um I I would push back just a little bit on the faceless army thing, and I definitely agree. I think that that's I totally get that with the Chitauri invasion. You get that in the Avengers, and then you get that also into Infinity War and Endgame. Um, but I um I mean, I would at least in my imagining in my rewrite, I was trying to think of a way that you could find something that would unite, right? That you would unite the worldviews of Killmonger and Black Panther, and ultimately they both, while they have opposite viewpoints, they both still ultimately want what's best for Wakanda, and like what would be a threat big enough to unite them in order to fight together, right? Like
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
and
I
mhm,
think Eric convinces um, T'Challa that he was wrong, and I think at the end he recognizes it. They don't go enough into what that meant. They
right,
don't
right,
tell you how they outreach to different places around the world, and then they kind of retcon it because now that they're all dead, Ramonda is closed up again now in Black Panther 2. Spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen it. And now they're retreating back to their borders, and now they're like, no, this vibranium is ours, and we don't want to share it with anyone. So it did. I had more issue with Black Panther 2 with now Wakanda retreating back into itself, even though we've already fought Thanos with the rest of the world, and we do want to help you, but now this is our toy, and we won't share it anymore.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think that Black Panther 2 is in a way almost a retelling of the first movie's plot, and it's I mean it's not exactly one to one, but yeah, I agree. They kind of retread the same ground, which is a little disappointing, but also at the same time, hats off to the writers and the directors because they really faced something
Oh, that
so
was a monumental
instrumental.
task to write
Yeah.
out Chadwick. Yeah.
And for the time that the time frame that they had, I think they did an admirable job. But yeah, no, I agree.
You guys killed it with that movie.
Yeah. Okay. I speaking of killing it, I wanna hear some more. I wanna hear some more rewrites. I'm excited.
Right.
All right. Well, if we're gonna save
Yes.
Mike's for last, so I will go next.
Yes.
A movie that I'm very disappointed with, and that part of it that it does not live up to the source material is the second Avengers movie, Avengers: Age of Ultron. I don't really have an issue with a lot of the cast. Obviously, the main Avengers team is okay. Paul Bettany becoming the Vision, I thought was really great. Wanda Maximoff and Pietro Maximoff are okay. I really do actually prefer the MCU Quicksilver to the Fox Quicksilver. I know that's that's a hot take for some people. The problem is that, and I colloquially call it the weekend at Ultrons, not Age of Ultron, because an age is where Ultron needs to win this film at the beginning. This needs to be a lot more like the What If episode, where Ultron wins, enslaves humanity for a year or two, and our Avengers have to come back and fight and defeat Ultron, a powerful Ultron that's conquered Earth. And so this puts the MCU back 3 or 4 years because Ultron, we give him an age of ruling Earth. And we might even discover some new Avengers who come up through the underground, because there's going to be a slow buildup of a resistance to the rule of Ultron. I still not sure if I kill an Avenger yet, because I do sort of want to keep them around, which makes it difficult. But I might, instead of just throwing them on the Avengers team at the end, they sort of build up this underground movement, the original 6 Avengers, and then they recruit more. They recruit Falcon. They recruit Pietro and Wanda Maximoff after they've betrayed Ultron, because he's taken over the world. This wasn't what they were signed up for originally in that beginning scene where they meet him in the church. And you get a real imposing, threatening Ultron. Less, and I understand he does have the faceless army of robots, but we get an actual chance for James Spader to really flex his voice acting muscle as the ruler of Earth. And we can even see him interacting with other planets now, because he's conquered Earth. Now he wants to move on, and he wants more. And so while he's doing that, and maybe reaching out to some of the other planets, we might even that way, hey, Earth is being run by this horrible robot. We should probably get over there and see what we can do to help. And so we get more of an Infinity War level Avengers film, instead of trying to set up a lot of things about the Infinity Stones that are coming but that aren't there yet. And then even we don't really go there, because Thor talks about finding the Infinity Stones. He tries for a couple of months and then gives up, and now Ragnarok happens. So yeah, I think that's really where I would change it. and now you've put the so after and the MCU can kind of continue on similarly the way it did. I'm having a hard time coming up why you use Sokovia Accords though, because these aren't just heroes blowing up one city in Sokovia. This is them saving the world from a despot. But so that might be a bit hard to explain. But I want to remake Age of Ultron to not be weekend at Ultrons anymore.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, Age of Ultron, it definitely feels like one of those movies that they used to bridge a gap and to like just say, hey, we got to release a movie. We got to kind of make it fit into this, Infinity War Endgame that we're shooting for. But it can't be. It's got to be big, but it can't be too big. And it just kind of makes Ultron kind of feel like a second-rate villain.
Yeah.
I totally agree with the weekend at the weekend at Ultron's. And
It's a matter of days. It literally is a matter of days, and that's the
Yeah.
most frustrating part. And like you said, Ultron is an Avengers level villain. He is a
Yeah.
Thanos level villain that is defeated in a couple of days. That's not how that should have gone.
Yeah, and
isn't his story that like Ant-Man created him?
Yeah, and the problematic part about Ultron from the comics is like the Ant-Man that created him is there's some domestic abuse in there, and
He's a booze hound.
I don't mind the origin of Ultron going from, and I'd like the suit of armor around the world mentality, or the justification. Like Tony's afraid. He's having PTSD from Avengers. He might be having premonitions for Infinity War. And so there's that. You can see why he does it. But the result is that Ultron's he's not a big enough threat. Like, this is the thing, like, he's in the internet and they just scrub him from the internet in like a couple of seconds. Like, no, come on. It's
Right.
why I'm holding out hope that there's a version of Ultron, there's a head or some code somewhere where we can bring Ultron back, and maybe in a Young Avengers movie or something, and we can make him more threatening.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think the only thing that I would add into your retelling is I think that I think you just got to try to find a way to fit it into the overall narrative. And I think that Ultron taking over and kind of wrecking Earth is great motivation for the Avengers to try to find the Infinity Stones. And I think that would be a great primary motivator. I know you kind of like talked about Thor kind of looking for it, but definitely at the end of Age of Ultron, the Avengers splitting up, that some of them go off into space to look for the rest of the Infinity Stones, leading us into,
he kind of says it in the beginning of Ragnarok. I tried to look for it, but then it kind of went nowhere.
Right.
And I'm like, it did it? Like, where 2 or 3 of the stones are already.
Right.
And if you don't know anything about Xandar, you can just go over there. They got one too.
Right.
I think you've got almost 4 of them. You know where they are. The only one that's really not sure about is the Soul Stone. And of course, they wait till Infinity War to bring that up. But then he's like, oh yeah, Ragnarok. Oh, I got distracted.
Right.
I guess the thing is, if you have a real Age of Ultron, and to make it really imposing and really threatening, you have to kill a main Avenger. You can't kill Pietro Maximoff.
Yeah,
and so
totally agree.
Which one?
Tony
Not
Stark.
sure. I mean, see, I feel like that's like if you retold, I don't know, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, where Anakin doesn't turn to the dark side.
Right.
And in the video I saw, like, well, this really ruined a better story that I thought would have happened. So you should keep Tony Stark alive. I don't really want to kill Cap, but I'm thinking you might kill Thor, even though that stops Ragnarok and maybe stops his actual best movie. Because killing Hawkeye, I mean, I could have killed Hawkeye 20 times already in the MCU, to be honest. And it would have no impact on the story, and everyone like, oh, nuts, the guy who shoots arrows well is dead.
Yeah, right.
Does he really? No offense to Jeremy Renner and Hawkeye, does he really have that much impact on the universe? Not really. So yeah, I'm not sure even how opposing killing Hawkeye, because they kind of teased it in the end of Ultron, was that he was shot at, but Pietro Maximoff takes the bullet for him, and you're like, sure, you could have killed either. You could have killed them both. Probably wouldn't have been any different.
Mm-hmm. You know, the interesting thing is, this is the time that, like, this was done by the venerable Joss Whedon, whose name we are obligated to spit when we say. But there was a time when he could do no wrong with the Firefly and the Serenity and the first Avengers movie. We were like, this guy is hot, and like, you know, we didn't really know the Russo brothers as a household name. We were just saying, you know, this Joss Whedon guy is so amazing. And when he made the second movie, like, it disintegrated his name. Like, the only other thing he's ever been known for is doing the rough draft of Justice League.
I mean, he also did really mess up that movie after Zack Snyder was removed. I mean, the problem with Joss Whedon, though, with Age of Ultron was, this is definitely the studio telling them, you need to make a commercial for your several upcoming movies. You need to tease a conflict between Iron Man and Captain America. You need to tease that the Infinity Stones are coming. You kind of need to tease Thor going off and ending Asgard. They gave him too many things to set up that it distracted them from the actual story they were telling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, thinking what you guys are talking about. I mean, I could definitely see maybe Vision sacrificing himself, maybe him dying and then getting, you know, reborn with the Mind Stone. I don't know. Just spitballing, but yeah, I definitely agree. You gotta kill an Avenger.
It's just it's the same thing, because they introduced Pietro in the film and then kill him at the end, and you're like, yeah, I mean, I know him for 2 hours.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It's not really, the impact's not there.
Right. And that's how I felt about Eternals with all those characters. I was like, okay.
Yeah, they almost needed to do an Avengers style universe to set up all those characters.
Yeah, Eternals
before they made that movie, but it's tough.
It's tough. I think Eternals works better as a TV show. And if I had rewritten Eternals, I would have rewritten it as a TV show, as opposed to like just a 2-hour movie. There's just so much there.
Yep.
Oh yeah, well that was a good rewrite. I'm liking that one.
I mean, we've teased it long enough. I think we need to hear what Mike's.
Yeah, I gotta hear Mike's.
Gosh, I'm chomping at the bit, guys. Okay, so I think it's a travesty that not many people know the story that I'm about to mention. But around 1997, a genius artist named Alex Ross was in charge of writing DC's Kingdom Come, which people kind of know by heart. It's iconic. It's part of the DC universe. It could be a movie. It's a deep, deep story, but it's about DC characters in the future and what happens when there's too many heroes who, with no responsibility, all power, no responsibility. He wrote this story, but then he also wrote a story for Marvel, wrote and drew, and his art style is super realistic. I love it. He wrote and drew an Earth X story for Marvel, which also asks the question, what happens when everyone's a superhero with superpowers? And it's also set in the future. So a lot of people have heard of Kingdom Come, but they've not heard of Earth X. And I think Marvel kind of stepped over it because it's a world that they can never really use. They had fun with it when they had fun with it, but then they kind of moved on. So I didn't really look at any of the Marvel movies that came out because I'm like, that's I don't want to make a small impact. I want to make a greater impact. But I also realize that this will never come into being. It totally messes with the whole entire universe. it could be maybe like a cartoon one-off film, but it'll never fit into the MCU. Kevin Feige would spit on it. But it does honor a great story that if you ever have like Marvel Unlimited on your phones, look up Earth X. So basically what happens, now that I've given you the segue into this, it takes a look at the character Black Bolt. Black Bolt he made this bomb that is filled with terrigen mist. It explodes over the earth. It gives everybody superpowers. Like every single human being in the world has some kind of superpower. So the world kind of goes into madness. Everybody's fighting each other. Everyone's killing each other. The Avengers have they get so overwhelmed that they want to quit. Like basically they quit. So, and then one day the Watcher, I can never pronounce his name, Uatu. He hires a guy named Machine Man to kind of, because Uatu gets blinded in one of these events by Black Bolt. So he kind of hires Machine Man to tell him and be a witness to these events. And the book kind of goes into depth with like all these new character arcs. But the movie's going to be kind of more simple. I'm thinking Machine Man is going to be like the young face that you want to follow. But it's going to be about Uatu wanting to get an Avengers team together because not because he wants to stop Black Bolt. He wants to get revenge. He wants to avenge the Earth for the awful crime that he did. So, and Black Bolt is going to be like the misunderstood guy who, like, he had the best intentions for this, and things just kind of went haywire, and it kind of just made him crazy and bitter and angry, maybe a little guilty. So the whole fun thing about this is that like you can mess with any character. So, Captain America is like in this future, he's like 60 or 70 or 80 years old. He's an old man. He's you have like cults upon cults, like a Spidermen Cult, where people just kind of have like these sects that kind of are based on the old superheroes. And for in the comic book series, like Kraven the Hunter is actually like a big thorn in everyone's side. He actually decided that he wanted to kill as many superheroes as he could and like put their heads on the wall. So that's like his main goal. So in this movie, I was going to have Medusa, Black Bolt. Tony Stark is going to be just like this AI voice, like Siri. The Thing is going to have his own family. Sue Storm replaces Iron Man and becomes Iron Maiden. She actually gets like the powers to manipulate metal. And then the Red Skull, he has like a predecessor just named the Skull, and he's like a evil bad guy. So it's going to be about the Avengers kind of coming together, saying, we're so overwhelmed with this evil world that's run amok. Like, where do we even start? Where's our hope? And, Justin Timberlake, or I say Justin Timberlake because that's the guy I choose to be Machine Man. He's the only guy I can think of who hasn't been in a superhero movie. He's the one who he doesn't want to take an observer role. He wants to get in and try to renew everyone's hope in the plan. So it's about him, quelling the forces of the Avengers, making them have a comeback, and to finally face off against Black Bolt and come to terms with his crimes. I came up with a bunch of actors and actresses. I can just go down the list if you guys care.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Keep in mind this is an alternate universe, so there's going to be a few reruns and rethinks. Justin Timberlake would make a good Machine Man. Bruce Willis as an old Captain America sounds really cool to me. Bryan Cranston as Uatu.
Well, I like Bryan Cranston and everything.
Yes. I thought a WWE wrestler named Seth Rollins. He's a crazy WWE guy, but he would be the leader of a Spidermen cult. So he's like this crazy guy with an obsession for Spider-Man, and he runs a cult.
Beautiful.
David Harbour as Kraven the Hunter, because he did so well as the Russian Captain America.
Yes.
Millie Bobby Brown as Mary Jane Watson, who in this series has teleportation powers.
Yeah.
Zendaya as Medusa, married to Black Bolt, who's played by Rami Malek.
Nice.
I like it.
Robert Downey Jr. as himself, he brings the money, but he plays like this robotic AI. Jason Momoa as the Thing. Maybe,
Interesting.
I don't know. Maybe he's too tall for the role, but he does play a good.
I mean, your Thing is probably going to be mostly CG, so that still works.
Yeah.
Works.
Yeah.
Finn Wolfhard and Jenna Ortega as the Thing's children, because they play a big role in the series.
Right.
Keke Palmer. I had to look up who this was, but I wanted a fresh face. She's in the movie Nope.
Yeah.
She would make a great Sue Storm. And then Jamie Campbell. I can't remember where I got him from, but he would play a great bad guy as the Skull.
I think he was in. I don't remember if he was the. He was the Thing in the Fan Fantastic, wasn't he?
Maybe.
Or is that someone else?
I think. Maybe. Maybe he was. I don't know.
I mean, I think a lot of people want Robert Downey Jr. back as an AI. So I think you're playing to the masses for that one. People would like that casting. I'm kind of surprised Justin Timberlake isn't in a superhero film already.
Right?
It's overdue. After Shrek 3 and his sci-fi movie Just in Time.
Yeah, I thought he would be. He's a pretty looking dude.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this story I wouldn't hold out hope, but I don't think you can completely in an MCU with a multiverse and an animated What If that you couldn't make this somehow.
Right.
Right. They might question me on Zendaya. They're like, dude, we already have one of those. And David Harbour too.
I mean, if you think about it, there are a few people that have played two people in the MCU, and they've actually written them into the story that way. Like a couple of the Howling Commandos from Captain America: The First Avenger. One of them is the principal now in Midtown High, and they wrote it now as his descendant. Similarly, there's one of the characters I just started at my Infinity Saga rewatch. So I've watched the first Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk. And there's a lab tech in the Incredible Hulk who now plays a teacher at Midtown High in the Spider-Man movies. So they tend to bring people back, and then when people notice this, they will write in story why they're there.
Right. I mean, Linda Cardellini is technically in it twice too. Like she's Hawkeye's wife and Layla.
Yes.
Lila.
And the Walrus was someone else.
Oh yeah.
Was I think Ant-Man's ex-wife.
Yeah.
In the original Ant-Man.
Yep.
So
and,
they are not against reusing talent.
Right. And they're also not above just recasting people like what they did with what's her face in Ant-Man.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of recasting. I think Edward Norton has a lot to say about not being Hulk anymore. But I think after watching that film, I realized how much more I appreciate Mark Ruffalo as Hulk.
Yeah. There's a softness to Ruffalo that Norton just
No,
you know.
or how much I really appreciate Don Cheadle as War Machine.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Don Cheadle. Yeah. Warmonger. Sorry, War Machine and Winter Soldier definitely are to me are one of the most underutilized characters in the MCU. There's such a depth to them, and yeah, it's such a shame that they don't get the recognition I think that they deserve beyond just being second fiddles to their to Iron Man and Captain America
Right.
respectively.
Well, and I think going forward, at least, War Machine, because the Armor Wars series is now film,
Mm-hmm.
he'll get his chance. Bucky, I can't say for sure will.
Such a shame.
Well, he did have his chance in the Falcon and Winter Soldier series.
It was more of a buddy cop. I think you'll see a bit more of him. We'll have to find out why he's a member of the Thunderbolts when that
Right?
releases next year.
Mhm.
But I think because now Rhodey gets to step out of the spotlight of Iron Man and be the center of that, and maybe the legacy will be he'll be cleaning up Iron Man's sort of mess, getting his tech back from the bad people.
Mhm.
Where Sam got to take over from Captain America, he gets the shield. Bucky still sort of plays second fiddle now to a new Cap instead.
Yeah.
Well, that was great, fellas. I really enjoyed everyone's
I think
ideas.
Marvel should get Mike on the phone, and they need to make this tomorrow.
Right?
Right?
How many times, Adam, have we said,
Mm.
Kevin Feige, you know how to find me? I mean, we say that in almost every episode, right?
Yeah, and honestly, I could see why there might be a reservation to stick this into a mainline MCU situation. But I wish that they took the route that DC has taken with their animated movies and stuff like that. And there's so many stories that kind of get left behind, and this is one I wasn't super familiar with.
Mhm.
But yeah, I want to see this now, and I could see this being an awesome animated feature film.
Yeah. I
I mean,
I think it
Mm.
would be like a Miles Morales type Into the Spider-Verse.
I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of telling you all the things that DC did wrong, because that we could be here for days. But
True that.
the one thing they might do right is this idea that they can have a separate universe of this is an Elseworld story. It
Right.
doesn't have to connect to the main story, and
Right.
that it's kind of a cake and eat it too scenario where you can have something else that's a Joker that's not because people like this Joker, we can keep that, but it doesn't have to affect our main Joker and our main universe.
Yeah.
Marvel could do more with it, and they should, because they've just said, "Hey, there's a multiverse," and we're talking about multiverses. It's just, I think people would be tired. It'd be a lot of content, and that's the thing, is they have so many stories in universe that to make more out of it would probably
Mhm.
maybe just contribute to the fatigue. And yeah, that's
Yeah, for
unfortunate.
sure.
But
Mhm.
who knows? When they reboot everything in 50 years, they'll make Earth X, Mike, and we'll give you writing credit for it.
Yes.
Amen. And if I can at least get someone to just look at the Earth X series, because it is beautifully drawn and written.
I
And
have to look it up now, and I have to see where I can get a copy of this.
yeah, I mean, it does recast the Hulk. The Hulk becomes a gorilla with Banner. Like, he was able to split his mind into a human and to split the other side of the Hulk into a gorilla. So that you have that to look forward to.
Oh wow!
Maybe that's how they bring Norton back. Norton.
Norton's the human or the gorilla?
Yes.
Maybe Gorilla. I don't know.
Yeah, let him make out the nuance of the character through grunts. Because I'm not
Exactly.
really sure I appreciate him speaking as much.
Oh, that's great.
So
Okay. Mhm.
at the top of the hour, we have
Yes.
our what you all came here for.
Yes.
This is another man's geeky dream, but he actually got it as a reality. We're talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 by
Woo.
James Gunn.
Spoilers.
Spoilers everywhere, folks. So I don't even know where to start. I have a list of ideas I want to share, but I think I
Yes.
should just start with what is your guys' initial reaction to this movie?
I mean, taking a stab at it. I mean, I really do feel like this is kind of James Gunn's ultimate farewell letter to a series. I think he's given so much of his his life to, and it definitely felt like the culmination for his characters and his storytelling. And I think the MCU will sorely miss him. And yeah, it was I said it, I said it a couple times, but I really think everything that Marvel kind of strives to try to do, I think this movie has in spades. I think there's just an overwhelming amount of humanity and friendship and, a good bit of comedy and just the human will overcoming. And I think it's a good culmination of James Gunn's vision.
Mm-hmm. All right.
My initial reaction was when I got home. I think I wrote on the Discord, this is the most James Gunn anyone has ever James Gunned in a film before.
Yeah, 100%.
and it's to its benefit, and it points. I think I had a little nitpick to its detriment because it's just really, really in your face how much James Gunn is all over this.
100%.
And the thing about it is that because it's a kind of an ending of a 3-film arc for the Guardians, they let it be a Guardian story, and they tried their best not to make it another episode of the MCU film series. So for some people, if you're going to this movie thinking like, where does this push the multiverse saga forward? It doesn't really. It gives us a new Guardians team at the end, which will be interesting because again, we're not getting a James Gunn Guardians anymore. Can somebody else step in to make a Guardians 4? Because there's definitely a very powerful team that's left as a result. I, like a lot of people, was shocked we didn't lose any of the characters. I don't know if that bothers me at all, though. It does seem kind of abrupt at the end where they just decide, well, I'm going to walk away from guardianing. I don't know if that's a really good verb to use. But and it works, and it's emotional, and it's impactful, and you get the development of the characters very clearly laid out, and it's a well done film. For me, the MCU though at this point is a long running TV series, and it bugs me a bit when I hear people say like, well, I can't just jump in. Like, yeah, if you're not jumped in by now, you're kind of behind the boat. You do really need to do your homework, because part of the appeal is that this is a interconnected universe of stories. I guess for Guardians though, you don't need it. You need to have seen the Guardians films to know who they are, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. The movie starts, you have Cosmo the dog, and you have Kraglin, and I'm like, oh crap, I'm supposed to know who these guys are. And I was like, oh no, should I have watched the Christmas show? Ugh.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
Kraglin's been through the series.
yeah.
Kraglin is a Ravager, and then I think Kraglin is a quasi Guardian at the end of the second film, because he is sort of the spiritual takeover. The legacy of
Yandu?
Yondu, and he takes the spear, he takes the fin, and so that's where he is. I don't know how officially Guardian he was, and I don't know how you stamp your Guardian card to become a member, but he's been in all the films, and he's been kind of there.
Yeah.
Cosmo was really more of a throw in from the last film as well, and he does show up in the Christmas special, but yeah,
Well,
it's
he's a
really
part
hard.
of. Oh, sorry.
It's really hard a character to develop for a dog. I don't really know what else other than that.
Yeah, I mean, Cosmo was semi-introduced as kind of like a throwaway character, as he's in the collector's collection
Yeah,
in Nowhere. So then he kind of becomes a part of the Guardians after they purchase Nowhere at some undetermined point before the Christmas special, and then Cosmo plays more of a bigger role in the Christmas
Mhm.
special. So I can understand why you might feel a little confused, but I feel like they do a good job of like introducing the two of them if you don't really remember, and like
Mhm.
a retelling of like what their powers are, what their responsibilities are as you kind of walk
Yeah.
through.
I
And mhm.
yeah. I have
yeah.
to
I mean, refusing to say you're not a bad dog is a cute device, and
mhm.
you go back to it a few times, but it's funny every time. It's very James Gunn.
For sure.
Yeah. Um, like I had to piece it together because the sequel, Volume 2, is 6 years removed from the movie, and there was no way I was gonna review it. So there were
Yeah.
some things I had to be like, wait, they control that skull ship now? Oh, I didn't know that. Um, like I thought Kraglin was Yandu's son, which it didn't
Yeah.
ruin the movie. It just was like, okay, all right, I'm supposed to know who these people are.
Yeah, but purchasing or Nowhere or having Nowhere be the Guardian's home base is a Christmas special reveal as well.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So again, that's another one where, and again, I know I hear the criticism all the time, but I think people started to talk about it at Infinity War, where if you walked into Infinity War and you hadn't seen any Marvel films, they expected you to know who Doctor Strange was. They expect you to know who the characters were, who hadn't met who before, and they kind of were at the point where this is where we are now. We've
Right.
we've done the work to develop a universe. We're kind of proud of that part. So you kind of have to read up or find out who the people are if you're going to not be confused in any of the newer films.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree. I think there's a difference between how James Gunn presented um his stuff and how other movies like um Multiverse of Madness, where the stuff for James Gunn was important, but it wasn't like story defining. Whereas with Multiverse of Madness, it was like, oh, this movie's completely based on this TV series, and
Well,
he
and see,
definitely.
this is the
Mhm,
thing I heard. I heard your last episode, and I had a
mhm,
bone to pick with that a bit because
mm,
it seemed like they kind of said, like for me especially, I've watched most or all the shows.
mhm.
I'm treating this like a long range series where I want to
Right.
know. And so when I signed Multiverse of Madness, he's Doctor Strange meets with Wanda and she says, "Oh, I know I made some mistakes," and he right away says, "I'm not here to talk about Westview." And I know what that meant, but it's like, oh man, but I really want him to talk about Westview. I want to know
Right.
what you think about this. But you're just like, no, it's not important that you watch that. Good for you for doing it, but we're going to skip that and pretend because other people have it, and we're going to move on with this story that we're trying to tell. And so,
Hmm.
for a fan who keeps up with it, you're a little frustrated because you're like, can we have a little Easter egg there? Like, yeah, well, I guess Westview was it, right? That was all. You said Westview. That meant the show I watched mattered a little bit, but it didn't really because you just dismissed it, and that was all.
Hmm. Right. So
So yeah, I think with Multiverse of Madness, yeah,
Mm.
if you would have recognized that one word, and then that was it.
Yeah, and I think more my criticism comes in the characterization of Wanda, and yeah, I think her character arc in um inner show and then into the movie just feels, I don't know, it just feels
Abrupt.
Well, that's
abrupt.
the
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
That's the thing. The people who watched the show saw her go through this evil, not evil, but she was a horrible person enslaved to town. And then we thought, well, she's realized that this was bad, what she did was wrong, and is now like, I'm putting myself in isolation because of the horrible things I did, and I'm going to try to get over it. But then the movie starts, and oh, hold on, off screen, she read this book that made her re-evil again. And so now we have to
Right.
bring, and so the people watching the show are like, hold on, I thought we developed this character part where we got over that our kids are real, and she's not evil, and she's grown as a person and realized her mistakes, and you know, has learned from them. But no, but off screen she read the evil book, and now she's
Right.
evil, re-evil. And so
Reeve.
that, I think, for people watching the show, that was the frustrating thing. We were like, no, we got over this part already.
Yeah, right. Well, you know, if you do squint a little, you can kind of feel like maybe this happened first and then she enslaved the town. If that helps.
So I don't know. I mean, the it's the struggle with the interconnected universe, because you don't want to tell everyone, hey, so July whatever, Miss Marvel is going to release, or the Marvels is going to release, and we are going to tell you to watch Captain Marvel, Infinity War, Endgame, WandaVision, this, because otherwise you won't understand it. So instead of watching 6 hours or 8 hours of content, people like, forget it, I'm not watching that movie. If I'm not going to understand it, I don't want to do the homework.
Mhm.
You have to draw people in the theater to say, like, this is, you do have to sort of convince people that some of these are standalone stories that are going to be good on their own and not part of the thing, because you can't watch Breaking Bad starting season 5. You know, it just
Right.
doesn't work. You
Yeah.
don't understand where everyone is. You don't understand anyone's motivations. You don't understand the development that's happening. It's hard to do that. And so there's the thing that it's still money. It's still about driving people to the box office and getting people in theaters. But just so you know what's happening, watch 12 other films first.
Yeah. And maybe
Yeah.
that's why I liked Enter the Spider-Verse, because I'm like, blank canvas, finally.
No, I think that's totally fair. And I think among the casualties of the way that I think Marvel has been doing business is you lose some stuff along the way, like the stuff with like Vision and all the stuff in WandaVision was honestly some of the most, thought provoking, like introspective, like, TV that I've seen in a while, and then they just don't address it. And
Yeah.
it's sad. And maybe they'll bring it, they'll bring a spotlight to it later on, but it's a shame.
I mean, the struggle is that there is a degree of flexibility and creativity that each director can bring to a project.
Right.
But
Mhm.
then there still is an overarching narrative that they have to follow, and there is a bit of a blueprint. So anytime they get to go color outside the lines, and then the next director or whoever in that interconnected story decides, well, that doesn't really have anything to do with what I want to tell, then you have these threads that do go untold. And sometimes there's something that you really wanted to see continue but doesn't.
Right,
Mhm.
right. And I think that's one of the things that I think draws a lot of people's interest into the Guardians of the Galaxy, because I think over the 3 movies, and including the Christmas special, it's still a pretty contained universe within the
Mhm.
larger universe. So I do think Guardians is a little bit more um, accessible to people, and I think that they do a good job in Guardians 3. James Gunn, his fingerprints are all over it.
Mhm.
You're very clearly like, oh, these are the bad guys, these are the good guys. The good guys say funny things, the bad guys say bad things, and there's you know there's gonna be hijinks along the way, but yeah, I think Guardians 3 is a kind of a good middle ground. And I really do think that James Gunn is one of the best directors right now that are adapting these comic books, and because
Mm-hmm.
he does a really good job of um, taking the spirit of these characters, but still telling his own story on the screen with these characters. He's definitely more inspired by these characters, and he gets the character motivations, I think, pretty well. What do you guys think?
What I like about James Gunn is you can tell he loves music videos. Um, he invented the idea that like mainstream music can go into superhero movies, because literally before him everything was like a rush of piano and violins, and then his stuff came out, and it has all these 80s, and he doubles down, and like there are parts of volume 3 that are just like pure music videos, like when they're jumping off that ship in different color astronaut suits. I'm like, okay, when did I go to an OK Go video? um and that idea has kind of run its course in the superhero world now. Like in Black Adam, when Black Adam starts, you hear the Smashing Pumpkins, butterfly with bullet wings, you know, as they're crawling over the city, and they're like, oh, trying to get the mainstream in on it. Thank you, James Gunn.
I mean, there are films that do it better, and there's some that don't. There's some that don't.
Mm-hmm.
I think the
Agreed.
Captain Marvel movie kind of tried to hit you over the head with the '90s references and the "I'm just a girl" and the it really didn't hit with me.
Mm-hmm.
My number one, the one thing I really appreciate about James Gunn films is there's an emotional arc to every story.
Mm.
And like I cry in a lot of the Guardian moments. I cried when Yondu died. Those character moments that they're very relatable for a group of space aliens, humanoid and some not humanoid, that then they really should deserve to be.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, James Gunn does a great job of humanizing things that aren't human.
Right.
And he really gets across how much he cares about his characters. And there's not a character that's wasted. Everyone serves a purpose. Everyone serves a story. Like I think directly in contrast with like Quantumania, right? Like how many of those characters, like the resistance characters that were just honestly just forgettable throwaway generic characters, but there's so many background characters in Guardians of the Galaxy 3 that you're just like, oh, there's so much depth, and they serve a purpose. Like the mom on Counter Earth that helps them out and lends them her car. Like she's in the film for like what, less than 5 minutes, but there's so much more of an emotional attachment to her than there is that giant Cyclops thing that just dies in Ant-Man. Like nobody cares, but
I
people
mean,
care about. Mhm.
I was so disappointed because I'd heard rumor about William Jackson Harper, who I think he really came to fame in the TV show The Good Place
Mm,
as one of the dead characters in the afterlife. And I
yeah.
heard rumor that he was supposed to be, or he could have been, an MCU version of Mr. Fantastic.
Oh.
And so that character was really disappointing, what he ended up being. And he might be more. I don't know. I really hope they do more with that. But it's true. Uh, there's and Ant-Man has its faults for sure. The third one. The way James Gunn puts a film together is that everyone sort of has a meaningful purpose for being there, and they add to the depth, or they
Mhm.
will bring out a redeeming quality in one of our characters that will show
Mm-hmm.
development in how they've learned through the film.
Mm, yeah.
Now, which is a great segue into Nathan Fillion's role in the movie. When I saw his name, I'm like, finally, he's gonna break out into the comic book movie world. He's gonna redeem what he lost in Serenity, and then you kind of see him. He's kind of a joke. He's the head. He's the head of like the security at this guy at like the evil plant, and he's got like a few jokes and he's like a down to earth, relatable henchman kind of a guy. And then like I am curious about his story. Like I want to see him make a comeback. But it's like they spent the nickel on him.
The unfortunate part was that Nathan Fillion and James Gunn are collaborators in quite a few films. In Guardians 2, he was rumored to be a very important character in the MCU, Wonder Man.
Yeah, that would have been sick.
And that was cut. And so we kind of have Wonder Man. I think Wonder Man actually has been cast already in something else in a TV series that's coming up. So it will not be Nathan Fillion, unfortunately. We'll have to see how that turns out. But I think in the Vision Quest series that's coming up, that character will be a big part of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I my problem with when directors cast names like Nathan Fillion or whoever in these like kind of minor roles, a lot of times they're doing it just for like a shock value or like an audience pop.
It's a joke in itself.
Right. But the way that Gunn uses him as that, I think there's definitely a pop when he comes on screen. Like my theater kind of got excited when he was there. How could you not? It's Nathan Fillion. But also at the same time, he didn't just leave it there, right? Like he connected him with the story. They had a running joke with him, and one that was pretty funny. Yeah, so he wasn't just, oh hey, that's a really funny cameo, like what they did with in Multiverse of Madness with what's his face,
Bruce Campbell.
Bruce Campbell. They actually made him a part of the story, right? Instead of just oh hey, that guy.
Right.
Yeah, I think the more egregious stunt casting, if people who watch the Mandalorian Star Wars TV show, was there had a couple of off not really, more like fetch questy kind of episodes, and on one of the planets they cast Jack Black and Lizzo as like magistrates and leaders, and you're like, okay, but you could have put anybody in that role and it would have been the same. It really had no impact on the story whatsoever. So Jack Black was really wasted, and it seemed like a cameo grab for no reason.
So let's talk about the hero's quest. Who was who was the hero in this movie? Was it Peter Quill in his redemption to find love? Was it Rocket, even though he was in comatose for 3/4 of the movie? Dare I say, was it Drax trying to find out that he was going to be a dad, or like that he has dad skills? That's kind of his payoff. A little sad that like Groot, he lost his cuteness as a baby, and you have to watch the extra video. Like Groot finds protein powder, which is another side movie in the MC universe. But he's jacked, but he doesn't really have like that much of a story to him.
I mean, it's in honor of the upcoming Fast X movie. It's a family movie, I think. I think one of the family members has been injured, and we need to save our family. So I would say, the Guardians as a team, and the refreshing part about it is that the quest that they're going on, it's not to save the universe, it's not to rescue someone from evil, whatever. It's to save our family member who might die.
Right. And I did
It's-
find that refreshing.
It is a change of pace, and it's sort of it's a character driven story that James Gunn brings out that the MCU has lacked for a little bit of time.
Mm.
Yeah, and I feel like the default story in superheroes is, oh, you have to sacrifice the few in order to save the many, right? Peter Parker gives up, his personal relationships to save, New York. But it was great to see that kind of flipped, right? Like it didn't, the universe was put on hold for a second, right? And it was
Yeah.
just them trying to save Rocket. And and I kind of read the movie as, and I think you could read the other Guardians too, where it's not necessarily about the growth of, I think there's growth for each of the individual characters, but I kind of view them as one entity, right? They're all kind of growing together. Like they're all equally the protagonists, right? They're all equally, they're, you got to read them as one unit, right? One family. And that's what this one that's what this one felt like. And I think I'm interested to see how they're going to use Star-Lord into the future. I think it was interesting that they chose to say that Star-Lords are going to be returning, not Rocket.
Right.
Because it definitely felt like this story was more about Rocket than it was about Star-Lord. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, like
So the
Rocket
more
Rocket was the motivation for every hero to be a hero in this movie. Yet
Hmm.
Rocket had the least amount of like action besides flashbacks. And I wonder if like Chris Cooper, was it Chris Cooper? Bradley Cooper.
Bradley Cooper.
If Bradley Cooper said, guys, I have a busy schedule. Can you not put me in that much?
Oh.
Well, I mean,
What do you-
part of the thing you go back to seeing Rocket's origin is you understand how he got to be the way he is,
Mhm.
and I think that's one of the really interesting parts of the film is that you kind of understand him a little bit better and
Mhm.
why he is the way he is. The characters all sort of get to again to beat the family metaphor to death. They get to know each other better, and they appreciate each other more. You see it with all the bickering through the film. The neat little Easter egg that I think James Gunn's confirmed since the film has been out is near the end where Groot says, "I love all of you,"
Right.
and everyone thinks, "Wait a minute, he didn't just say I'm Groot." James Gunn's confirmed that. So now that we've seen 3 Guardians films, this is sort of how you spending time with Groot over time, you eventually understand it and you understand his language. And that was the audience now understanding him and not just hearing I'm Groot. It's hearing what he actually is saying.
Right.
And so we have grown with the Guardians and now we're part of the family as well.
Mm-hmm. My other suspicion is that one of the reasons why we like this movie is because Marvel is better at goodbyes than they are at to be continued. When something's a to be continued, it gets tangled, it gets lost. The network has to take over and make sure that the director is playing it safe. But this was a goodbye, sort of like how Endgame had a lot of goodbyes. And that when it comes to saying goodbye to a character, it's more powerful than just saying to be continued. Wait till you see the other stuff.
I mean, there's
yeah.
a subtle to be continued in the post credit scene.
Yeah.
Because we have a new Guardians team, and I think they're still going to be around. Again, what I mentioned before is like who will write them and what will their story be. That's interesting. I don't know if anyone can tell a Guardian story like James Gunn, except for James Gunn.
Yeah.
But I think they'll be back, and I can't say that'll be a Guardians 4. I can't not say that won't be a Marvels or another galactic story that's comes from that. If that whatever comes up, if we introduce a new galactic character that meets the Guardians or is Guardians adjacent, because there's still a lot of stories to tell from Adam Warlock. We have a new Guardian, and I can't remember if she's named. I think she becomes Moondragon eventually.
Yeah.
And she's quite powerful as well. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And speaking of Adam Warlock,
Mm.
in the Thanos, he is in the comic books. He's attributed as the first person to destroy Thanos when Thanos did his very first Infinity Stone takeover of the universe, and he has like a very messianic story where he dies for everybody, or like he gives his life over. And in this, James Gunn kind of said, "No, no, no, no. We're making a country bumpkin, like total inbred hick."
Yeah, I mean they made it clear that he came out early from the cocoon. The Thanos connection, I think, and I know that my more comic versed colleagues would agree. I think that ship has sailed, unfortunately. We're not going to see anything Infinity related, but I mean, he will learn, and he won't be a bumbling buffoon later on. But yeah, he's basically he was just born. I think that's the idea.
Yeah.
It's funny that they used this like Adam Warlock. I know they had to eventually get to him, but there's other characters that we don't care about as much. There's like another character that kind of has like this. He was kind of modeled after a satire of Superman called Kalark. And I thought that would have been a better choice than Adam Warlock. He's kind of like this airhead like person with Superman powers that kind of just rushes at things brain first and sees what he can smash. So I just think it.
Yeah, I guess we'll see where it goes. This is where, in hindsight, you can again, people have gone back and said Age of Ultron isn't that bad because X, Y, and Z led to this. That's where I get frustrated when I understand again that this is part of a wider universe, but if I have to see 2 or 3 more films later to understand the context of a previous film, then I'm not crazy about that.
Yeah.
So like to fully appreciate where Adam Warlock started, you're going to have to see something 2 or 3 projects from now, and reevaluate it with that new information. Again, not great though, because right now you're like for a very significant comic book character that didn't seem like what I envisioned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Adam, what did you think of Adam Warlock? Share names.
We do share names. I think he had one of the most beautiful cinematic shots that made me die of laughter and was simultaneously awed by its beauty when they recreated the creation of Adam painting. Honestly, one of the greatest comic book shots of all time. MC at least in the MCU was friggin' beautiful. But I and this is probably coming from a perspective of a person that's more casually in the comics and has more of an interest in the MCU as a movie and TV series. I didn't mind it as much. I think I was at least satisfied with him coming out of the cocoon early, and but I think fundamentally, what Gunn was trying to do with the character was to almost do like an abbreviated origin story for him, and you see like a very abbreviated, like his creation, his power, like losing his mom, becoming his motivation, kind of swapping him over to the good guys. So I mean, I'm okay with it. I do wish that they gave him more of a role, rather than just like him just randomly showing up for a gag or two. But yeah, no, I didn't have too much of a problem, and if anything, I appreciated that he wasn't as maybe powerful as he might have been in the comics, because I think that Marvel sometimes has a problem with power creeping certain characters, like in Infinity War or Endgame, it's just like, oh, Captain Marvel is just here destroying giant spaceships. Okay, um, just randomly powering characters up and powering characters down, and you're just like, getting whiplash. Um,
Mhm.
The
so
the trouble is that you run into the Superman dilemma. How do you make a character as powerful as Superman have to struggle with anything?
right,
And how do you write a compelling story for someone who is invincible? And usually you have to make him, you have to sacrifice his best friend or make him a member of the CIA or anyway, long story.
right.
So yeah, and Adam Warlock will be that character because again, what's the challenge that he's going to face?
Right. They're like, you're Superman, but also you're kind of an idiot. That's your kryptonite thinking. You know.
Yep.
Yeah. He was definitely an entertaining character, and I guess if you squint, tilt your head sideways, you can pretend you don't know him from the comic books. He can just be called Smashy Guy.
Mm,
Will Poulter was a great
mm,
ditzy Adam Warlock for sure. I think
Yeah.
the
yeah,
casting was spot on.
I agree.
Yeah, like he nailed it.
Mm.
Um, if you've
Uh,
ever seen that Netflix original bomb called The Ridiculous Six, starring Adam Sandler,
mhm.
there's a character played by Taylor Lautner who's like a total smiling bumpkin idiot whose like shirt is always half off, and I kept getting that visual with Adam
Right.
Warlock.
Yep.
Yeah, and I, yeah, and I think the characterization, I think I'm okay with. I guess I think it's very James Gunn, right? Like he's like, um, you know, uh, the characters as they're portrayed, their strengths and their weaknesses are polar opposites, right? Like Star-Lord, he has the charisma and he has, the charm and all that stuff, but really on the inside, he's just an insecure child, right? And
Hmm.
then, with Adam Warlock on the outside, he's supposed to be a perfect human, but he's kind of a doofus, and that's like, that's his mirror. But
Hmm.
I think that the thing that was kind of just a shame is that I feel like he kind of fills the same character spaces like Drax, right? Like where he's like this all powerful, like super strong dude, and then he's just kind of a doofus. But
Yeah.
I think that the way that Drax differentiates himself, I think it's just like how literal he is, and I don't know, he just comes across as a little bit more charming, in a really weird way. You're like, oh, as opposed to like Adam Warlock, you're like, oh, this guy's just dumb.
I mean,
You
I
know,
appreciated Drax more in this film because,
Mm,
like you said, I think Drax was always the comic relief. And then when it actually came to fighting anyone, he was usually getting beat up. I mean, and you would think like, but wait a minute, I mean, he's called the Destroyer. He's never really destroyed anything yet. And I think this is finally a film where he was like, oh, okay, don't Drax is on another level.
mm,
yeah,
yeah,
like his whole redemption story is like, oh, I'm kind of a crappy hero, but I'm a wonderful dad who has a warm and soft spot. Like I appreciated that redemption because I never like the whole Drax character and his jokes never really hit with me. Like I get it, he takes things literally. They kind of up it in this movie where he's like making poop jokes and he thinks he's making analogies and metaphors. And I'm like, okay, all right, let's move on.
Yeah, and they treat it as such because they're like, wait a minute, he's not supposed to get metaphors. He's
Yeah.
supposed to be literal, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And I also want to point out that hallway scene, where they're just running through as the team, kind of the action culmination. Man, it was nice to finally see some quality CGI, and it really feels like the last like 3 or 4 CGI budgets were used in just that one hallway scene. And
I
yeah,
mean,
shouts out to Gunn.
Marvel likes to make a good hallway fight.
Yeah,
There's-
they do.
There's a lot of hallways. You have to be more specific. Are we talking about the burning ship hallway?
Oh, the one where Drax impales a dude's leg into the wall.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, they're fighting.
Oh
They're-
yeah, that was good.
Yeah, no, you could tell that, with all the stuff that's going on behind the scenes and firing the head of the CGI department or whatever, it paid off. The CGI definitely felt nice.
Maybe also pausing some projects and spacing out the release a little bit more.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
I think we're starting to push back on things. We're not rushing stuff out as much, and we're going to give the artists the chance to do the work.
Mhm.
Absolutely, and they delivered on this movie. This movie was gorgeous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, that does bring up the space scene where
Mm.
Peter Quill is in the vacuum of space, and apparently the side effects of being in the vacuum of space is, puffiness, irritation, and but if you go back to oxygen, it turns itself back within the hour. And at first I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to do it. They're just going to kill him. Like, James Gunn, you SOB. You did it. You finally did it. But I guess all good things need to come to an end. And then he gets saved, and then he's okay, and he's making jokes. And you're like, oh, well, my understanding of science says he should be dead, but my Marvel sense sees him alive.
I mean,
Mhm.
if you guys follow the YouTube series Pitch Meeting, which a guy goes over all these films, and he plays an executive and an executive character and a writer character who will pitch the movie, and he picks out all of these plot holes and inconsistencies. And in his video, he's already done it for Guardians 3. He said, well, we're just going to tell everybody that Peter forgot his helmet and his rocket boots at home. Because otherwise he should have just been able to fly over that space just fine.
Right.
And then because, we promised people Adam Warlock, we have to have him do something. So let's have him save Peter in that moment. Because we promised people in Guardians 2 that Adam Warlock was going to be in this, and he's barely been in it. And so, yeah. Again, this is the problem with that is that James had a 3-film arc, and he wrote, unless somebody told him that they had to put Adam Warlock in there,
Right.
anticipating the Infinity Saga, and like, oh, you gotta get Adam Warlock in there. But then when they went to make Infinity War, they're like, oh yeah, we'll just leave him in the cocoon. So that makes me wonder. But yeah, definitely some pseudoscience on how you didn't, choke to death.
Well, I mean, I kind of just chalked it up to him being half celestial. I don't know, because they kind of talk about it a little bit in Guardians 2, right? They talk about how he's got a little extra durability and all that stuff because he's.
If we want to nitpick, he lost the power when he killed the Pleiad, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but again, I don't know.
Fancy with a gun. That's his. That's a superpower.
Superpower. So I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe James Gunn would just say it's residual. I don't know.
Yeah.
But no, go ahead.
I get a feeling like, and it'll lead into the next question, which is, why is it the legendary Star-Lord, and why is he returning? And I feel like somebody at Disney said, Chris, if you want to continue to be Star-Lord, we will make this solo series for you, or I don't know if it'll be a series or a film. And because I wasn't aware of it, and I asked someone about the legendary Star-Lord. It's a comic run where Peter Quill goes on solo adventures.
Right.
And there's even a tie-in with an X-Men character, Kitty Pryde, where they have a relationship. And so I'm waiting for, and I don't know if it's coming soon, the announcement of a solo Star-Lord project coming up.
Yeah, no, that was definitely interesting. It was yeah, I definitely was thrown for a loop because it definitely felt like in the lead up to it that Chris Pratt was definitely very
He was
very
finished.
yeah, it felt like he was finished, and the way that he was talking about it and how he was saying that he wouldn't be in a movie unless it was James Gunn and all this other stuff, and yeah, it really threw me when they said that. So it'll
That,
be
yeah, and
interesting,
his character finds happiness. Like
right?
his story ends pretty much. Like he goes back to his grandpa on Earth.
He complains about cutting the grass for the neighbor. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, he's a lot more now.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and I'm interested to see. I'm interested to see what they'll do with him, and I don't know if it'll join up with Sam and be an Avenger, or they'll just use him as a face to give some legitimacy to, like, if they want to do a Defenders, because it feels like they're ramping up for a West Coast like a West Coast Avengers or Defenders,
Great Lakes Adventures.
something. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
So
in the grand scheme of things, there has to be a way to keep all these characters on the board for the inevitable Kang Dynasty Secret Wars team up.
here's hoping.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can't. I think you have to bring. I think Star Lord is coming back for one of those films for sure.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
he'll do in the meantime and do keep people care what he's doing, I don't know.
Yeah.
For
Any
sure.
any chance that Kang is going to be actually Sue Storm, like it's revealed in the Ultimates?
Well, that's the thing. The rumor is that they are looking, because I think someone had written somewhere that they'd offered the role to John Boyega,
Yeah,
the
that'd be
Star Wars
sick.
character. Yeah, and he said no, thank you.
Yeah,
So they're going to
yeah,
gender swap the character now because of his unfortunate personal issues. That's the Jonathan Majors, the current king.
Mm.
right.
Oh.
Wow.
Speaking
Wow.
of bad guys, every Marvel movie needs a bad guy. This one's not notable. Like he just doesn't have star power behind his name. He's the evolutionary, and his whole thing is he wants Rocket's brain. That's the whole story. Which you think he would have it on backup, you know.
What do you mean?
Maybe a disc with the code on it, but I guess not.
Well, I think the unique part about Rocket was his ability to think outside the box or to come up with these new solutions that none of his other experiments had done.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why he had coveted Rocket so much. My wife had a very interesting observation. I've heard a lot of people say that and I can't pronounce the actor's name, so I won't do it justice to try, but that he did a good job portraying the High Evolutionary. My wife just was surprised at how much he went from 0 to 100. Like he went from
It was great.
Conversational voice to screaming at someone and so angry, and it was a bit jarring a couple of times. And you're thinking like, okay, wow, slow down there, man.
Yeah, he used to have that quirk where it makes you hate him.
You a little bit.
Getting angry and wanting to destroy worlds is kind of his quirk.
He has a short fuse. He has a short fuse, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to say the story isn't really about him, the evil bad guy. It's not like it's like we either destroy him or the world is screwed. It's more like he's a speed bump on our way to redemption, and to show off how good of a pure-hearted of a group we are. We have to stop him.
I feel it's the perfect kind of villain that you can use in a one-off story and then throw away.
Yeah.
You don't need to worry about it. Like, again, you don't make an Age of Ultron over a weekend.
Right.
And then you use it up. That's not the kind of character that you can just go over one film. That should be a multi-film arc for Ultron.
Right.
But High Evolutionary and more of a sheer comic character, sure. And then rip his face off and then probably leave him to die on a ship that blows up.
Yeah. I mean, after after Kang, I feel like there's only Magneto and, Doom, Victor Von Doom left for major villains. I don't know how Marvel's gonna get back on
Well,
feet.
I've got a couple more.
Skrull. Super
I've got a
Skrull.
couple more. I think Annihilus is another
Yeah.
character from the negative zone. The big one, I think, obviously literally the largest one. I don't know, I'm blanking on the
Galactus.
name. Galactus is another.
Oh, so funny story. They're coming out with a Transformers movie, right?
Right.
About Unicron, the planet-eating robot. Is
Yep.
that like a a suck it, Marvel? You're too late.
I mean, they steal each ideas all the time.
Yeah.
Thanos
I
is
mean-
just dark side in different skin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. And I kind of read the High Evolutionary as kind of, Gunn using him as a stand-in for fate or for God, for whatever have you, and just how the human will can triumph over, circumstances, right? Like I think that the way that the High Evolutionary is portrayed is just like he's evil because he's evil, he's bad, and he causes he causes conflict with the all the characters. Yeah, and he serves the purpose of being everything that the Guardians are not. Like he doesn't have a family. He doesn't have anyone he trusts. He treats people like garbage, right? Like he's constantly looking for perfection, whereas the Guardians are like, we aren't perfect. We're still a family. We still care about each other, and because of that, we're gonna overcome, the perfect plan, the
Mm-hmm.
fate,
I
what
mean,
have you.
someone pointed this out to me that in the High Evolutionary does say this in the film that he created some species, and so in some worlds he is a deity of a sort. So
Right.
if the word gets out, as they tend to do with the Guardians, their reputations precede them. If they are found to have killed their god, there will be a few places in the universe where the new Guardians, and it will be persona non grata because they've killed God.
Right.
And
Right.
where do repercussions come from that?
Right. Right.
Yeah. So let's talk about the new Guardians because I'm reminded of the end of the Age of Ultron, where you got a glimpse of the new Avengers. You see them working out in the new Avengers Tower area, and you saw Falcon, working out with Wanda and Vision's there too. And it's setting you up for the new Avengers, but it never came to be. Like those Avengers never worked together. They immediately went into civil war where they were against each other in some respects. And so we kind of have that same idea with the new Guardians, going on missions together, kind of setting up a sequel. Though I feel like that might happen again too. It's like we never see them together.
Yeah, I've started to speculate where we could see them, and I don't know if the Marvels is too soon, but that would be the most logical one because that's the only cosmic-based film you're going to see for a while. We're going to get more grounded as we get into the Secret Invasion series, the Thunderbolts, Captain America 4. We're kind of going back down to earth for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I don't know if I see a phase 7, I guess, of a Guardians 4.
Yeah.
Marvel tends to cut these things off at trilogies. Like the only fourth film we've seen so far is Thor, and that didn't work out as well. Again, you're not having James Gunn come back,
Right.
so that might be that might put some nerves into some of the executives at Disney to try that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I could see them trying to do a TV show maybe.
I feel like a TV show would be the only one where you could fall in love with those guys.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'm okay with it. I mean, I'm okay with them just kind of sitting there until they're needed. I think I would be more interested if the end said, Rocket Raccoon and the new Guardians will return. I'd be more interested, but the fact that they went with Star Lord makes me think that they're more interested in Star Lord going into the future than the new Guardians. I don't know.
The new Guardians, if you look at the roster, so you have Rocket, Groot, Cosmo, the dog,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Kraglin, Adam
Mm-hmm.
Warlock.
Mm-hmm.
In the film, she's called Phyla, but
Yeah.
in the comics, she's been known to take the moniker Moondragon.
Okay.
Oh, and so
Child,
two of those characters are cosmic level beings, and so
Right.
you have a really hard time finding an antagonist for them and finding
Mhm.
something that they're going to struggle with.
Mhm.
I kind of was a little bit surprised, and Gunn brought them along through all the films because they had the original, the comic Guardians, which was Dark, and I can't see that I can't remember the characters' names, but you had Sylvester Stallone's character, Michelle Yeoh, and I think a couple of them weren't in this film. They cut a couple out, but they had the original comics Guardians team along as Ravagers,
Mhm.
and some
Interesting.
people had speculated that's where they would have gone, and they would have inherited the Guardians of the Galaxy moniker, but it doesn't appear they're going that way.
Mhm. One, Karen Gillan is my favorite female in this movie. Like, her story and temperament was the most interesting. And I'm kind of sad that, she didn't have the best redemption arc. It's kind of up in the air about, her future in Marvel, but like, I really thought she outshined Zoe Saldana.
Yeah, I mean, her story is definitely one of tragic upbringing, and you see her overcome all those things that Thanos. Because the funny thing was, like, wow, that's even worse than what Thanos did to me when they're watching the footage from Rocket, and it's kind of like, oh, well, maybe, but that's also really painful to watch. From the insider part, like if you read into what the actors are saying, Karen Gillan was one of the ones who said, "I'm finished." So they needed to give her something to do to be not a Guardian anymore. I think Gamora, Zoe Saldana is finished. Drax, I think, was upset about the whole James Gunn firing and rehiring, and so he doesn't want to be back. Also, he has those three specifically have a lot of prosthetic makeup to put on to be these characters. And you can see how maybe 6 hours of makeup for several months filming is just not for you anymore.
Yeah.
Understood.
I
Right.
mean, it's the
Right.
same way I think Chris Evans doesn't really want to have super jacked arms and a basically a fitness body all the year round, and that he's just tired of working out.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I definitely think they're all those actors that you mentioned are finding other greener pastures beyond MCU. I think
Yeah.
they Dave Bautista is arguably probably the most successful out of all of them, which is funny enough because I mean being in Dune, being in Blade Runner, like he's got quite a career ahead of him, and the Evans is making the rounds on the action hero circuit, and yeah, I think Kieran Gillian is she's a young face in Hollywood, and she's gonna find roles. And Zoe's what a character in several multi-billion-dollar franchises,
Yep.
so she's not hurting.
She's always the space chick
Always.
that the
Yep.
superhero falls in love with.
Yeah, so it makes sense, and
Mhm.
I think Gunn also has proven that you don't have to kill off your characters to be final, to finalize them. And
Mhm.
yeah, I like the idea that they, even if they don't come back, that they're still alive somewhere in the universe doing something.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm really worried about what a new director would do with the Guardians team. That a not James Gunn. I mean, I don't know even if there is and Star Wars has a lot of the disciples of George Lucas that have taken over now. But is there a James Gunn light out there somewhere that can do a Guardian story justice? Maybe
Oh,
not.
Well, Suicide Squad, the sequel got replaced with James Gunn, so maybe the original Suicide Squad director,
Can take over the Guardians of the Galaxy.
yes, do a little switcheroo.
There you go.
I'm trying to remember who it is. It's, you know what? The internet erased it. Like, oh, David Ayer.
Yeah,
David
David
Ayer
Ayer.
is going to be the new director. So,
yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
where it goes is that's the other thing is like, do we wait until after Secret Wars? I mean, because I think the slate is very packed until that point, and there's still things we don't know about that are going to fit in there somewhere. Because I think the Spider-Man isn't totally decided yet. So it will be years, I think, before we see the Guardians again in a solo movie. Anyway,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, if I had to pick someone right now, gun to head, maybe like someone like Dan Trachtenberg, uh, doing stuff like revealed stuff, but he also's directed some episodes of The Boys. So, I mean, and I think he's done. Hold on, I'm looking it up. Yeah, he did an episode of Black Mirror. So, I mean, I think he could have a shot. He has a shot in it. But yeah, I don't think there's anybody out there that you immediately say this guy or
Now,
girl.
yeah. Now the new cool thing is to bring back 90s directors. In early 2000s. So I'm thinking Joel Schumacher. It's time.
No,
Step
no,
away from Batman Forever.
no, dear God, no.
I mean, if we wanted to just blow up stuff, we could do what's his name from the Transformers.
Oh, Michael Bay.
We could do a Michael Bay Guardians. That sounds terrible now that I said that.
Oh, speaking of Michael Bay tropes, there was a lot of this one trope in this movie where everyone's walking towards the camera in slow motion. That had to have happened 6 times. And like the first time it's cool, but about the 6th time I'm like, okay, we get it. They're a group and they're walking toward
They're
their
family. It's
quest.
all about family.
I wanted them to drive in cars.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think
See, that's the Guardians of the Galaxy will revert to a team of street racers.
I mean, really, that's all
Right?
that's missing.
That's all that's missing.
Who needs rocket ships when you have family?
Right? Exactly.
That's where Vin Diesel will take it next. It'll be a Fast 12 crossover.
Beautiful.
So I think we nailed it in this movie. I think
yeah.
We all give it the thumbs up approval.
Yeah.
Very much. Yeah, 2 thumbs up.
Definitely my top 10, maybe top 5 Marvel movies. I don't know. It's too soon to tell, but definitely my top 10.
Have you guys done a top 5?
I don't know if we've officially done a top. I don't know. Have we, Mike?
No, we have not, and I can tell you right now that I'd be introducing some of Marvel's rated R stuff.
I mean, mine would be just the 3 Captain America movies: No Way Home, or no, not No Way Home, Homecoming, and probably maybe Infinity War. Yeah, maybe Infinity War.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a lot of love for Phase 1 in my top 5. Phase 1 and 2, I would say. Winter Soldier will be my favorite movie no matter
Yeah,
what.
for sure.
Infinity.
Agreed.
It's the best movie. Iron Man 1. Guardians 1.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to go to Avengers 1.
Oh,
And then Infinity War.
interesting.
Understand.
I think I know Joss has had a rough go of it, but and that's a hot take I think for some people, that I think my favorite Avengers film is still the first one.
Interesting.
Just the coming together of the team, overcoming Loki. It's splitting hairs because
Yeah.
Infinity War is still so good. And Endgame would be a close third, but that would be my top 5.
Nice.
And Winter Soldier will not be supplanted by anything. I don't think
No,
ever.
Winter Soldier's, yeah, it's too good.
Yes. I know we're heading towards the end of our podcast, and it's great. Can I just is Volume 3 the first F-bomb ever recorded in
is.
the Marvel Universe?
That's not bleeped.
That's not bleak. Yep. And it's great.
Amazing.
It's a great F-bomb. It's
Yeah.
perfect. Get in the
Right?
car.
Yeah, right? So great.
So we look forward to greater and better F-bombs in the DC world.
Oh, and we'll see if they do more than PG-13, they might be allowed more than one a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. The casting rumors are starting to heat up for Superman, so I'm getting pretty excited.
Yeah, Kraglin's going to be the new Clark Kent. Pretty awesome.
I mean, just for the love of God, whoever, I know James, I know you're in charge of DC, but whatever executives have been sticking their nose in this stuff for the longest time, just shut up and go away for 3 years. Let these two guys have a semblance of a plan, implement it, and don't say anything. And if at the end of 3 years you don't like it, then you can. But in the meantime, shut up and go away.
Just reboot it.
You've ruined the first one, and you know what? For whatever, Zack Snyder apologists, I'm not one of them. You didn't give him a chance. You got one failure, and then you caused more failures. Stop doing that. Get out of the way. Let the creative people do the creative things.
Right. And James Gunn definitely, I think, is one of those directors that just won't tolerate it, and I think he's I really do hope they give him a blank check, because all the things that he's presenting in his new universe, I'm excited for. So
Amen.
Yeah, history just tells me that won't happen, and then we're going to regret it in 16 months when they're like, well, let's kind of change this. And I'm like, okay.
At least we're getting a sequel for the Batman and Joker, so
Yeah,
at least there's that. We
can look forward to the Elseworld stories that they are going to try to tell us to watch, I suppose. I mean, I'm still like, do I go to see Shazam because I know it won't matter to anything anymore?
Oh my God!
The Flash, I'm being told, is the greatest superhero movie ever.
Right?
And hardly anyone's ever seen it, and I'm like, okay.
Don't get me started on DC.
For a huge fall.
I can add 2 more hours. To this podcast. I am holding back so much, guys. Thank you,
some
everyone.
other time. Maybe some other time.
For
I'll
listening.
have to come back to commiserate of all my DC misery.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, anyways, thank you everyone for listening. Chris, thank you for joining us and sharing your wonderful knowledge of Marvel.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And if you want to hear more from us, we have a YouTube channel where we have this podcast on now under Film Logic. Join our Discord. I'll put the link in the description. Chris, is there anything you want to shout out before we leave?
Oh.
Well, I mean, I'm a member of the Retrologic Discord, so I'm around if you ever want to talk Marvel or DC or anything.
Yeah.
Again, it's the best community on the internet. Everyone should check it out. If you want more of my ramblings about why NHL 94 is the greatest, you can follow me on Twitter at ChrisHL94.
Yes,
I love it.
absolutely. You should friend him. Anyways, thank you for coming. I've been Mike.
I'm Adam.
I'm Chris.
Yeah.
Yay! Anyways, have a great night, everybody.
Goodbye.
I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way.
Houston, we have a problem.
But why male models?
Are you not entertained?
Why so serious?
It's alive! It's alive!
The snozberries taste like snozberry.